Order, order. Tony Vaughan to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It is a privilege to share under your chairship. I beg to move that this House has considered tackling barriers to educational opportunities. In the UK today, most 18-year-olds, around 64%, do not go to university. In today's debate, I want to focus on the barriers faced by that 64% of young people in accessing the education and training that they need to access fulfilling working lives. I do not believe that those 64% have benefited from the same educational opportunities as the minority of young people who leave school for university. That makes no moral, social or economic sense. In my view, our system of vocational education and training is not working for that 64% or for our country. In the constituency I represent of Folkestone and Hythe, there is incredible potential for a thriving vocational education and training system. My constituency has strengths in the creative industries, independent retail, tourism and hospitality, as well as green energy and nuclear decommissioning. We are home to the little chain called Wind Farm and the former Dungeness nuclear power station. However, the potential for a technical education system to supply these and other industries with skilled workers in Folkestone and Hythe and in the UK as a whole remains untapped. In 2022 to 23, there were 677 apprenticeship starts in Folkestone and Hythe, but only 5 apprenticeship starts in the leisure, tourism and travel sector that year, despite the size of the sector. And despite the significant number of regeneration projects in Folkestone and Hythe, the number of apprenticeship starts in construction, planning and the built environment fell by 49% in 22 to 23 compared with the previous year. Our country has some incredible further education colleges. I want to commend the work of East Kent College in Folkestone, which I visited during the general election campaign, where I've shown workshops, kitchens, classrooms where, among many other vocations, the builders, electricians, carpenters, programmers, chefs and healthcare workers of the future are being educated. In 2023, the college was judged to be outstanding by Ofsted and offers an incredible range of qualifications, like BTECs, T-levels, adult education, and also has a junior college which offers a 2-year creative curriculum for learners aged 14 and over who want to specialise in arts or business studies. I want to thank the staff and students at the college for their hard work and also for the grilling that they gave me and my and the other candidates at a hustings event hosted by the college before the election. Unfortunately, many colleges like East Kent College, not all students who complete courses there in specialist areas actually go on to work in those fields. That is not always down to students changing their minds. It's also because of the lack of jobs and apprenticeships available in the labour market. Under 14 years of Conservative government, apprenticeship starts plummeted, the apprenticeship levy was exposed to be inadequate, and further education was starved of vital funds. In 2015 to 16, the total number of apprenticeship starts was 509,000. By 22 to 23, the number of starts fell to 337. Between 27 and 24, the number of engineering apprenticeship starts fell by 42%. It was encouraging to see that apprenticeship starts grew 3% in the month that Labour took office, demonstrating employers' optimism following the change of government. The Conservatives' reforms like the apprenticeship levels and T-levels were, I'm afraid to say, ineffective. There was not enough flexibility built into the apprenticeship levy, and there was not enough investment in apprenticeships for younger learners. As the CEO of Make UK, Stephen Phipson, has said, successive governments provided inadequate funding for engineering apprenticeships, rendering them uneconomical for FE colleges and private providers to deliver. Neither have we had proper alignment between our industrial and our vocational education strategies. As a result, our skills policy has not been supporting the sectors of our economy we most need to grow. Sectors like battery technology, electric vehicle production and renewable technology manufacturing do not receive the funding for apprenticeships that they need. In turn, they do not benefit from a steady supply of skilled workers. We need to end the mismatch between what is taught and the skills needed by the labour market. I warmly welcome the Government's agenda for skills and vocational education. I welcome the budget announcement of an additional £300 million funding boost for further education next year. But we know that in this policy area, as in so many others, funding is not enough. Ambitious reform is what we need. I want to touch on three aspects of the Government skills policy: Skills England, devolution and reform of the apprenticeships levy. I support the creation of Skills England, which will end the fractured skills landscape and bring together combined authorities, businesses, workers, trade unions and colleges so that there is coordination to meet local economy skills needs. I think it's incredibly important that Skills England will be a strategic body so that it can make sure that our industrial strategy, Invest 35, and the vocational educational strategy work as one. Only then will sectors like advanced manufacturing, which is rightly a focus of our Invest 35 plan, benefit from a predictable supply of skilled labour. I also support the fact that part of Skills England mandate will be to collaborate with the Migration Advisory Committee, so we ensure that our own young talent is trained up and joins our labour market before we reach out to recruit from abroad. We have an abundance of young talent. That is about ensuring that our skills policy, this is about ensuring that our skills policy makes the most of the talent, work ethic, creativity of our young people, while also having an immigration system that welcomes the workers we need to get our economy growing and our public services working again. The Migration Advisory Committee has, for far too long, looked at labour market shortages in a vacuum, without thinking about how our skills policy can address those shortages in the long term. I also believe that it is important that more powers over skills and technical education are devolved. This is because the UK still has variation in our regional economies. For example, the creative industries are very important in Folkestone and Hythe. Nationally, that sector contributes to £124 billion to the UK economy in 22. In the West Midlands, the automotive sector is important. On Teesside, there is a resilient chemical sector, and there is still a proud steel industry in Scunthorpe and Port Talbot. So different regional economies will demand different focuses and priorities for policymakers. So I endorse the Government's plan to ensure that there are local skills improvement plans and that adult skills funding will be devolved to combined authorities. Reform of the apprenticeship levy is long overdue. The levy is a tax on employers with a wage bill of over £3 million in effect a year, which funds apprenticeships. The problem is that the funds levied can only be spent on very specific types of training. For example, businesses cannot use the money to fund any courses that are shorter than 1 year. The new growth and skills levy will be critical because it will mean that businesses will be able to pay for a greater range of training options. Apprentices will have more choice and apprenticeships can be shorter than a year. It's very important that employers will be required to fund more of their level 7, that is, master's degree level apprenticeships, and the money saved here will be reinvested into foundation apprenticeships, which will give younger workers more opportunity and flexibility. I know that the road ahead is challenging. Between 2017 and 2022, the number of skills shortages in the UK doubled to more than 500,000. And by 2022, skills shortages accounted for 36% of job vacancies. Training expenditure is also at its lowest level since records began in 2011. Yet the opportunities, if we get skills policy right, are huge. Total revenue from the levy is forecast to grow from £3.9 billion to £4.6 billion by 2029 due to rising wages. A broader skills base will mean more productive jobs, higher labour productivity, stronger wage growth and rising living standards for all workers, not just university-educated professionals. This will benefit young people, many of whom feel demotivated and disenfranchised and believe that the 21st century economy does not serve them. In places where they've been given a pound shop instead of a workshop, they may be right. In terms of future policy development, I would ask the Minister these things: whether she's able to provide more detail regarding the timeline as to when we can expect the different phases of development of Skills England. I'd also be grateful to know how the Government plans to align Invest 2035 with its post-16 educational strategy. Both of these strategies require prioritisation. So which sectors does the government plan to focus on to drive up the number of apprenticeship starts? And are there any other areas of educational and skills policy that the government would like to devolve to local economies and not only combined authorities, as there is no combined authority in Kent, for example? And what plans does the government have to ensure that we have more apprenticeship starts in the industries of the future, such as AI, autonomous vehicles, green energy and new nuclear?
Will you give way?
I will.
I thank the honourable member for giving way and securing this really important debate. Somerset is home to Agratas, which is a 40 gigawatt-hour gigafactory at the Gravity site, which is creating jobs and boosting the green economy. It's important that local people in Somerset have the skills to work in these jobs. So does the honourable member agree with me that we should encourage local partnerships between schools and industry to teach STEM skills and offer those apprenticeship opportunities?
The honourable member is absolutely right, and that's exactly what Skills England is going to do, because it's that collaboration between all the different stakeholders in society, not just business and not just colleges, so that we can get to a point where the skills needs are actually being facilitated by the educational providers. I'd like to close by saying just these things. A high-quality vocational educational system will improve social mobility and will be one of the best ways to tackle the precarity of low-skill, low-productivity, low-pay economies that has been built over the last 14 years. I look forward to working with the government to break down the barriers to opportunity to that 64% and to build a vocational training system we can all be proud of.
The question is that this House has considered the matter of tackling barriers to educational opportunities. This debate is very popular, oversubscribed. We've got over 17 members wanting to speak. I'm afraid in order to get everybody in, I will be imposing a time limit of 2.5 minutes, which will be the first person to speak is going to be Jamie Stone, who I'm sure will set a great example.
It is a very great pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Pritchard, and I do congratulate the honourable member for a most interesting speech. If you were to visit the Scottish Parliament, which some of you may have done, or I hope you will someday in the future, you cannot help but admire the woodwork, which is of the highest standard, the joinery, the carpentry, the cabinet making. I was on the committee that oversaw the building of that Parliament. I might say it nearly cost me my seat in the 2003 Scottish election, but that's beside the point. What struck me very forcibly was that we did not have in the United Kingdom the skills, the cabinet-making skills, the joinery skills, to produce a finished article of that quality. And most of that work was done by Eastern Europeans, from Romania, from Poland, and other Eastern European countries. My first point is that when skills disappear, they can sometimes disappear forever. Now, in my working life, I worked as a young man at a yard in Westeros called Kishorn, where the mighty Ninian Central platform was built for the North Sea. I worked at Nig, where a number of large steel jackets were constructed. At the high point of Nig in the early 1980s, some 5,000 people worked there. And they were highly skilled. They were trained in welding, they were trained in fabrication, and all manner of supporting disciplines to achieve some of the greatest structures ever built for the North Sea. Today, many of the people are retired or very nearly at the retirement age. And my big worry, to echo the point made by the honourable member, is that these people could pass on the skills. They could train young people up in the skills, but there's no effort for that to happen. So we could be faced with a parallel to the Scottish Parliament situation where skills could disappear. Now, I'm heartened by the news from Hull that they're going to construct turbine blades. That is good news, and the Prime Minister was quite correct to emphasise that today. The point is that we should be making far more of these offshore structures, floating offshore structures, in the United Kingdom than the cells, the blades, the towers themselves. And while we have the fabrication skills in different parts of the UK and in Scotland and in my constituency, we should get this business going again and to be training up the next generation. It's a simple point. In the past, my time is nearly out, we had an organisation called the Hands on Development Board. Under the management of the Scottish Government, they've been almost left to have almost nothing. I'm very sorry, and the one of them is not here to hear this. They should get up and actually sort it out, because if that isn't reactivated, then we're in dead trouble. Thank you very much, Mr. Pritchard.
John Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is a pleasure to be under your chairship, and I thank my honourable member, my friend, the member for Folkestone and Hythe, for securing this important debate and the compelling and comprehensive survey he gave of adult education. For centuries, Scotland had one of the best education systems in the world, but that is not the case today under the SNP. Attainment has been falling for years, as the recent PISA reviews show. Standards in literacy, mathematics and science are falling, and that, of course, is closing doors to children and young people in my seat. And their response, I'm afraid, in Glasgow has been to cut 172 teaching posts this year, with further cuts to come. And the attainment gap in Scottish schools is widening. Where you were born is becoming more important, not less important than it was, and barriers for poorer children are increasing. It's worth saying that this government is tackling one of the causes of the attainment gap, poverty, by introducing legislation that will make work pay, and tackling family poverty by increasing the national and living wage. But the SNP too are responsible for the attainment gap in our schools, and this is preventing young people getting good work and good jobs and being able to provide for their families. An example, a simple example of their failure. Since 2010, there's been a material drop in school attendance. So if you're not going to school, you're not learning. And there's been a general worsening of behaviour in Scottish schools, which Scottish Government figures themselves show since 2016. Put simply, in many Scottish schools, parents, children and teachers have great fear and worry about school behaviour. Nicola Sturgeon made it clear that closing the attainment gap was her main objective, and the SNP have failed on this. Third, adult education, which the member for Folkestone and Hythe has spoken so compellingly about. This is absolutely critical for jobs for people in Scotland, and the OECD have carried out a study recently of Scottish adult education and other matters in the west coast of Scotland, where my seat is located. And they have reported that career guidance for adults is challenging to access. Financial incentives to reinvest and invest in reskilling and upskilling workers are very low. And this has a terrible impact on low-paid workers in Scotland. And it has a real impact on economic growth in Scotland, and also matters such as transition from oil and gas to renewables, which is so critical. So what I would submit in conclusion, Mr. Chair, with 6 seconds to go, is that the elections take place in Holyrood in 2026, and really it's time for change in the government that puts education first. I'm obliged, Mr. Chair.
Ewan Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, and I commend the honourable gentleman from Folkestone and Hythe for securing this debate. It's a broad-ranging debate, barriers to educational opportunities. There are many things we could talk about, but in 150 seconds, I'm going to restrict myself to 3 things. The first is about free school meals. There were some pretty terrible things said by members of the party opposite to us in 2018 about what they said we were going to do to eligibility for free school meals. It didn't happen. In reality, the number of children eligible has risen from about 1 in 6 in 2010 to 1 in 3 most recently, and that's despite unemployment having come right down, and the number of children growing up in workless households having come right down, and the number of people in working on low pay having come right down. So what are they going to do to keep entitlement at around the same level it is now, even after universal credit rollout has concluded? The second I want to ask about is the holiday activities and food programme, which has been very successful for young people. I'm sure this new government wouldn't dream of cutting it. But I think a lot of local areas, and as one local area in Yorkshire has been discussing this very recently, would like some reassurance, some forward visibility about what is going to happen with the HAF programme after the end of this year. And finally, I wanted to ask about breakfast clubs. And the government has talked a great deal about primary school breakfast clubs. I think people are quite disappointed about the scale of what they've heard so far. Of the total number of primary schools in England, this first phase covers, I think, about 4.5%. They also talk about breakfast clubs as if it's something sort of novel, whereas in reality there are thousands of breakfast clubs at schools across this country already. And so when they say they need to move slowly because they need to have a pilot, what actually is it that the Minister thinks needs to be piloted? Is it the type of bowl or the angle of pour of the cornflakes, or is it just that they are trying to slow down the rollouts? But most importantly, what I want to ask about is secondary schools and special schools. Because among the thousands of breakfast clubs, including those supported by the National School Breakfast Programme, are secondary schools and special schools. And actually, if you talk about impacting something like attendance, you can have more impact with breakfast clubs at secondary school. Again, I'm sure the government won't think about cutting this programme. It would be unthinkable to do so. But what are they going to do, and when will they give visibility to secondary schools and to special schools about how they're going to grow the support for breakfast clubs in schools in the future?
Chairmanship. One of the many legacies of the previous government is a crisis in education and overwhelming barriers to opportunity for young people. These barriers do not diminish with age, as gaining new skills is difficult in a country where employer investment in training and development has fallen by a third. The UK economy is facing a severe skills shortage. Over the next decade, we'll need 350 construction apprenticeships and 1.3 million skilled tradespeople and 130 naval nuclear roles. However, apprenticeships have started to decline sharply in recent years, highlighting the need for a focus. Firstly, we want to create more opportunities of apprenticeships. Despite a chronic skills gap, for every apprenticeship, there are 3 applications. Restoring financial incentives to SMEs to take on apprenticeships, make the apprenticeship funding model more transparent, and get into our communities and showcase to children, young people and parents the opportunities that are out there. We need to increase financial support for the apprenticeship rate, because set at £6.40 at the moment is just not enough to survive on. Expanding foundational apprenticeships and the introduction of a shorter apprenticeships for those that cannot afford the 12 months, and simplifying the system and increasing the flexibility. Secondly, it's vital for us that we value all pathways. The toxic legacy of the Tories in education and the undervaluing of certain subjects, from vocational courses to the arts and social scientists, have meant a loss in these areas. Inspiring young people into diverse sectors is vital, and many young people and their parents just don't see trade careers as an option. We must boost careers advice and awareness of apprenticeships. We must use the growth and skills levy. The spending levy of money on access and outreach activities should be permitted, and careers advice must highlight the range of training provisions. And finally, we must bring local people into these opportunities. In my constituency, 8.8% are on the minimum wage, and we have good quality jobs in industry, technology, naval and maritime opportunities, but they're not being accessed by local people. I believe if you cannot see it, you cannot do it. We must open up these opportunities, whether it's children or people who want to change career, to local people and outreach them into their local communities. In short, we need to overhaul, we need to provide equalised valued places, and we must ensure local people have access.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard, for your chairmanship. I wish to contribute to this debate by talking about education opportunities that are close to my heart in the creative industries and the barriers in this country to a creative education. I come to this place a proud graduate of Chichester University in my constituency, and I'm living proof that a creative qualification can lead you down many paths, including to this place. But years of underfunding and poor organisation means that despite a booming creative industry in the UK, young people are finding it increasingly difficult to attain the education they need to enter the sector, especially through the state system. There has been a significant drop in arts enrolment at A-level, a 29% decline since 2010. Government grants for arts education has fallen 40% in real terms over the past decade, and those teaching arts-based subjects has dropped by 27% between 2011 and 2024. Mr Pritchard, I refer members to my register of interests as a trustee of Chichester Festival Theatre, which has a thriving learning, education and participation department and is leading the way in giving access to performing arts education for those from underprivileged backgrounds. Pallant House Gallery also has a fantastic education and outreach department. And Chichester College and Chichester University are creating the next generation of creatives that will feed into a creative industry that the Honourable Member for Folkestone and Hythe mentioned is worth £126 billion to the economy and creates 2.4 million jobs. The work that charities and organisations are doing in this space to reduce barriers to opportunity is immeasurable, and their work is at risk if local authorities are not appropriately funded to ensure their non-statutory obligations are protected. And when looking at arts education, the nature of the arts baccalaureate, the English baccalaureate, is it restricts take-up of the creative subjects and it adds additional barriers to artistic education. And that's why the Liberal Democrats would commit to including arts within the English baccalaureate, ensuring Ofsted monitors schools to provide a broad curriculum, including arts and creative in the creative and digital sectors. This encourages young people to continue with an arts-based qualification, which is shown to be beneficial to their mental health, as well as improve results in subjects such as English and maths, and improves attainment in education as a whole. The UK arts and creative industries are crucial to the UK economy, and cultural identity and barriers to the educational opportunities the sector can bring should not exist. And I look forward to the Minister's commitment to recognising the importance of creative education. Thank you.
Sarah Smith.
Thank you. And first of all, thanks to Mr Pritchard for his chairmanship, and to the Honourable Member for Folkestone and Hythe for securing this very important debate. I first got involved in politics because I thought it was wrong that the postcode in which you're born, unfortunately, far too often dictates the postcode, the further future life outcomes that you might secure. I've spent the last 17 years working, especially for some of the charities that you, my right honourable member, referenced, working to tackle that disadvantage gap. And I'm incredibly honoured to be the National Opportunity Mission champion for the Opportunity Mission, because I believe it's the most important element of this government's priorities to make sure that we break down the barriers to opportunity and make sure the child growing up in Clayton, in my constituency in Hyndburn, has exactly the same opportunities as a child might have growing up in Chelsea. My focus in today's debate is going to be on some of the issues that we have to tackle within the SEND system, and particularly for children and young people that grow up with special educational needs and disabilities. But first of all, I just wanted to highlight the absolutely catastrophic inheritance that we have inherited. Sadly, across this country right now, we've got 20% of children growing up in poverty, but in my constituency in Hyndburn, that's 37%. And the data is really, really stark. The Institute of Fiscal Studies demonstrates that if you grow up in the most affluent household, it leads to your earnings being 19 percentile points higher than if you're in the most disadvantaged household. For men, that is, for boys, but for girls, that raises to 27 percentiles point difference. However, I believe strongly that a strong state education system is the key to overcoming this. So I welcome the significant £1.4 billion schools rebuilding programme and the £2.1 billion that we're investing in the repairs fund that will make a direct impact in my constituency at St James's Schools, Nusden St Oswald's School, Hyndburn Academy, and also at Haslingden High School. But my inbox is filled with parents who are desperately fighting the system around DHCPs, and the most frequent emails and letters that I have to write to are to the head of SEND at the Borough Council, more than any other stakeholders. Just this week, a constituent shared with me that they've been waiting for over a year for a copy of her daughter's EHCP after an emergency review hearing. In the meantime, her daughter is out of education just before her GCSEs and the transition to college. So my question for the Minister is, conscious of time, the attention on SEND provision across the educational settings is welcome, but can the Minister share a little more on how the Government will approach this, and when we can expect the Children's Wellbeing Bill? Thank you.
Serve under your chairship, and I want to congratulate, first of all, the honourable gentleman for Folkestone and Hythe for the debate and for setting the scene and by being here and giving us all an opportunity to participate. I want to give 2 points. I want to make them as suggestions and helpful suggestions to the Minister. Some of the things we've done in Northern Ireland, because if they've been successful, then I would want to share them and tell others about them. In Northern Ireland, my Minister for Education, my DUP colleague Paul Given, has acknowledged these barriers in operation, along with others, and has implemented a new scheme called the RAISE programme, which offers an important opportunity to look afresh at the issues caused by deprivation and to drive forward a whole community place-based approach to remove the barriers to learning and educational achievement. And why is that important for us in Northern Ireland? Because in Northern Ireland, young white Protestant boys are not achieving their goals. Government and the Education Minister recognised that, and he set about trying to address that. So this programme he has is called the Department Now and continue to engage with key stakeholders in each RAISE, and that's the project that he has, locality, through a series of workshops over the coming weeks and months to identify needs, build the evidence base, and to bring forward strategic plans for consideration. And again, the Minister is always very keen to participate. Has the Minister had an opportunity to discuss these things with the Minister there? It might be something that maybe the Minister might wish to do here as well. And the second point I want to make in the short time I have, I want to reflect on one of the the most effective residents association within Strang. It's called the Scrabble Residents Association. And what they've done they've had a project over the last period of time, and it's to build up the confidence within communities where our young men they understand they can find a job, that they can break the cycle with their family and have pride going to their job. I met some of them young men and their pride and what they can do is excellent. So again, government has made funding available for some of those residents groups to do those projects on the ground and thereby give them people jobs. And they have been able to get jobs in some of the success stories, whether it be HCV drivers, whether it be working in the factories, whether it be working in the fields, whether it be driving. They're all success stories. So when it comes to looking forward, I would ask the Minister if she would consider some of the things that we've done in Northern Ireland, the RAISE programme, the projects we're doing with the community groups, and by that we can have value and add value to the local community at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I start by thanking my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone and High, for securing this debate. My experience as a maths teacher at a secondary school taught me about the barriers that our students face to opportunity. And given that these are issues that I've highlighted before many times and will continue to highlight in my capacity as a member of the Education Select Committee, I do want to focus my contribution today on the lack of support for young carers. This is primarily because it has been raised with me by my constituents in Leeds South West and Morley. Now, a recent report conducted by the Carers Trust highlights the issues. They spoke to almost 25,000 pupils and 65 young carer services to complete this report, and it highlighted three main concerns. Firstly, caring can have a significant negative impact on education, opportunity and attendance. In 2022-23, young carers on average missed more than a month of their education, and comparatively this was 9 days more than their classmates, not young carers. And the report also found that in England, almost half of young carers were persistently absent from secondary school that same year. The second area of concern was that many young carers simply are not spotted or recognised while they're in education. Only a quarter of the respondents in the Carers Trust survey agreed that teachers had a good understanding of their child challenges. And while many local young carer services are promoting awareness-raising campaigns, only a third of them said that they had the capacity to give education providers the help they need to identify young carers. And the third item in the report was that the report highlighted was the inconsistency of support offered to young carers in education. Almost 1 in 4 young carers stated that there was no support for them in their college, their school or their university. So what can we do to address this? Well, there's two things that I'd like to ask the Minister to consider today. First, if the Minister would consider adding the young carers to the Department for Education's daily attendance reporting scheme. This will help to inform both schools and local authorities about the young carers who are missing from school and their attendance. And the second thing that I'd like to ask the Minister to consider is if they would consider introducing a young carers pupil premium. This would ensure that schools have the funding they need to support all the young carers in their education institutions. To conclude, I'm very keen to support young carers in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon, and share my congratulations to the honourable member for Folkestone and Hythe for securing this very important debate. I do want to take the opportunity to highlight an issue that affects the future of many children in our communities, the barriers to educational opportunities faced by children in kinship care. In my constituency of Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes, there are 450 children that are currently living in kinship care, placing us within the top 10% in England and Wales. These children, who are being raised by relatives or close family friends, often face significant challenges that can hinder their educational process. Many of them have got special educational needs or disabilities, including social, emotional and mental health issues, as well as more than 1 in 10 being diagnosed with autistic spectrum disorder. These challenges mean that kinship children are much more likely to attend SEN schools compared to their peers. Kinship children in England alone are over 3 times more likely to have an EHCP than all other pupils. But despite their needs, kinship children often do not receive the same level of support as those in local authority care. The lack of support can leave them struggling to cope in the classroom and their post-school opportunities as well, impacting their ability to not only to learn but to thrive as well.
Kinship carers want educators to be better trained, to understand the unique challenges that kinship children face and to provide the support that these children need throughout their lives. It's crucial that we do address these barriers and ensure that kinship children receive the support that they need to flourish in their educational journey, just to give them a fair crack of the whip. That does mean improving access to special educational services, providing targeted training for educators and recognising the unique challenges faced by kinship families, and by doing so we can create a more inclusive and supportive educational environment for all children, ensuring that every child, as we have said in our mission statement, regardless of their background or their circumstances, has the opportunity to succeed. I just want to finish by asking the Minister a couple of questions, including if there are any specific actions that the Government is considering taking to support those children who are in kinship care, and if there has been any assessment made of the gap in SEND provision disproportionately affecting children who are in kinship care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I also wish to congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone and Hythe, for securing this important debate. University is great, but it is not for everyone. We need to have alternatives of equal status, value and quality. West Lothian College in my constituency, under the principal Jackie Galbraith, is a fantastic institution which delivers a range of vocational and non-vocational courses to thousands of pupils and learners every year. But colleges across Scotland have faced a decade of decline under the SNP, a lack of focus and a lack of funding. Since 2021, there's been a 17% real terms decline in college funding, with the most recent Scottish budget cutting £32.7 million for the budget for Scottish colleges, including a £12 million cut to student support funding. However, now, with a UK Labour government, there's hope for further education in Scotland. The UK budget delivers an extra £1.5 billion to the Scottish Government this year, an extra £3.4 billion next year, for them to invest in Scottish higher education. The Scottish Government now has the resources to restore Scottish colleges to their full potential, but they must act at pace and with the competence they have so far not shown in order to do so. Mr Chairman, on apprenticeships, the picture is no better. The SNP promised to deliver more apprenticeships, but just last year they had to be bounced into funding modern apprenticeships for the next financial year, with a press release from the Scottish Training Federation, which noted how their failure to fund Skills Development Scotland had left, and I quote, apprentices, training providers and employers in limbo. Across Livingston constituency, I've met with employers in renewables and house building and the food and drink sector, to name but a few, all who have spoken to me about the lack of apprenticeships in their sectors. So now the Scottish Government have the funding. It is for, as Pam Duncan-Glancy, my colleague in the Scottish Government, in the Scottish Parliament, has said, they have nowhere to hide from their record on funding further education and apprenticeships. It's finally for them to show ambition for Scotland and to break down the barriers for people across the Livingston constituency and across Scotland.
Aaron Paffy.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate my honourable friend for securing this debate, which is a crucial opportunity to reflect on the steps that we have now got to take to open up those opportunities for all to thrive. Employers regularly tell me that they're urgently seeking people equipped not just with the skills of today, but with the skills of tomorrow. They're preparing for new waves of technology, for evolving processes, for increased automation. They are preparing for the future. And in my constituency of Southampton Itchen, we see great examples of that at the National Oceanography Centre, at the transformative technology at Ocean Infinity. These and many other organisations embody the future that we're building, an economy fit for the 21st century. But only if we plan with intention and foresight for that future will we be able to break down the barriers to opportunity. That's why it's essential that ministers take advantage of the upcoming curriculum review and the establishment of Skills England to really build the foundations of what my honourable friend has set out today, and move away from high-stakes assessment, pivoting instead towards providing young people in schools with both the academic base but also the practical, applicable skills and opportunities that exist today and that inspire and excite them. So what might all that look like? Well, it's a curriculum that is fit for, as some of my honourable friends have said, kids with SEND, those with care experience, those who are young carers. It's about practical skills, financial, media literacy. It's about an ambitious approach to work experience. It's about realising the value of early visits to sites of industry, of creative companies that really inspire. And it's about building resilience in our children and young people. Southampton College and Itching College in my constituency are working hard to equip young people with the qualifications and skills, the apprenticeships that they need and the preparation that they deserve. And it's institutions like these that may benefit from the £300 million cash investment that we've announced in the budget. It's that kind of targeted support and a revamped programme of study and skills development that will drive meaningful change in our communities. As someone for whom education made all the difference, and as the proud husband of a secondary teacher, I know that it all starts with the foundations of education, and we can now look forward to real investment in that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Pritchard, and I'll begin by congratulating my honourable friend for securing this important debate. And with 4.3 million children living in poverty in the UK, 1 in 4 in my constituency, covering Northwich, Winsford and Middlewich, it's an urgent debate. Child poverty latches onto children before they are born, stays with them throughout their educational journey and follows them into adulthood. We know that education is the key to lifting people out of poverty. UNESCO estimates that world poverty could be cut in half if all adults completed secondary education. It's vital that we tackle each barrier to that outcome head on, and we've heard a number of them today, but there are many to choose from, aren't there? We could discuss high transport costs or low availability of services. We could discuss the effect of poor quality housing or the lack of available social housing. I'm going to focus on the provision for children with special educational needs and disabilities, like a number of my colleagues today. Inadequate provision for young people with SEND is something we've heard about time and again in this House. Every young person deserves the opportunity to thrive in an environment that's meeting their needs, but despite the best intentions from everyone involved, the current system is broken and actively incentivises bad outcomes for everyone. The recently published NAO report clearly sets out the stark inadequacies of a system that has not only lost the confidence of families, but is also adversarial, causes immense trauma for children and parents, and sets young people up to fail. It's abundantly clear that we need to rebuild the system from the ground up to ensure that it's not just functional, but robust and fully equipped to provide the necessary support for those that need it. We need more early intervention. We need improved teacher training so that schools are better able to identify and adapt to SEN. We need nothing short of a revolution in how mainstream schools, in particular at secondary, approach SEN with more resource provision to go with it. And we need to increase capacity in our state-run special schools and avoid the use of private schools that cost local authorities 5 or 6 times as much per child. But above all, we need to rebuild trust between parents and a system that has failed them for too long. I'm pleased that this government has made it a priority to put in place a SEN system that will break down barriers to opportunity and ensure every child is able to achieve and thrive, and I'll champion this crucial mission on behalf of my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And something about under your chairmanship. Sorry, I've forgotten the line. And thank you to... apologies.
No worries at all.
I know I do.
I'll take it, done it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to the member from Folkestone and Hyde for bringing forward this really important debate. Education is the best way in the world to bring peace and prosperity, and for people in my constituency of Milton Keynes to get better jobs and have better lives. In the 1960s, Harold Wilson dreamed of a University of the Air, and Jenny Lee made that a reality through the Open University, which they chose to base in Milton Keynes in my constituency, and I'm very lucky for it. This is so important for educational opportunity because the OU makes no distinction about your formal educational opportunities. In fact, they actively encourage those without formal qualifications to come forward and be everything that they can be. They are absolutely crucial for social mobility. More than a quarter of the undergraduates live in the most deprived areas across the UK. and more than 37,000 students last year had some kind of disability, particularly those that had been failed by the current school system and wanted that opportunity to make the most of their lives. The most important thing about the OU is its flexible learning models, and it's one that we've seen taken forward by many colleges and universities right across the UK and the world, including the Russell Group, because at the heart of any ambitious Labour government is education, education, education for everyone. And being for everyone, it means that it has to be at the heart of our universities, our colleges and our schools. And so far, this generation is not seeing that investment. So I'd like to ask the Minister how we are going to transform those opportunities for people in Milton Keynes and also for my daughters that are currently going through school.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I'm also grateful to my honourable friend for bringing this debate forward, and as a former senior lecturer at a further education college in Glasgow, I recognise its importance across the UK. I will focus my brief remarks on Scotland, however. In Scotland, we've had 17 years of the SNP government, 17 years of money being spent on projects that haven't worked, and 17 years of further education being treated as an afterthought. As a former FE lecturer in engineering, I will always place particular value on STEM courses. A once great industrial nation, Scotland has communities like mine in Airdrie and Shotts, where the industries of the past still shape who we are today and indeed where we will go in the future. However, I cannot stress enough the importance of the word opportunity. Opportunity of a decent education beyond our school years, of well-paid secured employment, is something we may take for granted, but for many in my constituency it is a distant possibility rather than a reality. I took the time to attend a meeting of the EIS, my former union, in North Lanarkshire, and hear directly from FE staff. The words undervalued, overworked and underpaid came up again and again. As a former senior lecturer myself, it was tough to hear the challenges of working in a sector only a few years after I left had worsened. But my passion to see renewed focus and investment in FE has only strengthened. The lack of investment is understandable from a Scottish Government that is financially illiterate. We have come to expect this narrow Weltanschauung from them. However, we must understand how this has come about. Too many people placed at the top of institutions in our country who have never had a trade, never worked their way up, learning every aspect of their trade or business, never understood the basics of how industry works and what technical and human skills are required for a modern workforce. I attended the Open University, an unashamedly Labour policy, and I place significant value on a good education and the importance of opportunity in an individual's outcomes. I will use my time in this place to fight to eliminate those barriers, and I look forward to working with honourable members in doing so. Thank you, Mr Pritchard, and can I once again thank my honourable friend for securing this important and timely debate.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And can I also thank my colleague, my honourable friend from Folkestone and Hyde, for securing this debate. And like many other here, as a former teacher in secondary education, this area is a particular passion. And of course, there are a multitude of situational barriers, institutional barriers and dispositional barriers which impact people. Each and every one of us will impact those over the course of our lives, and across our constituency, many people will have those that will layer upon each other. So I'm going to talk about in particular three types of barriers which have been identified by the former government but I believe need to be taken forward by this government. And the first one is around age. We know that over the course of our lifetimes, many of us might experience multiple careers, depending on the election results in future elections. But nevertheless, many of our constituents will see multiple jobs, multiple careers, and they need to be given those opportunities within the employment landscape to engage in continuous professional development, to see themselves not necessarily as university courses, but other types of courses and access to those. So what can be done to promote continuous professional development in the workplace? And we know that this is age-related as well. And I just want to highlight in my own constituency, BAE Systems, which is a major employer, just invested 200 million extra into the Rochester aerospace division, is promoting continuous professional development within its employment base, as well as additional apprenticeships for those 18 and over. And it's that type of large-scale initiative which can also link with the government's investment strategy around the Green New Deal, and where we can set the direction of future and align that with colleges and aspiration. The second one, as many of my colleagues have mentioned, is SEN access. Having met head teachers last week in Holmesdale and Holborough Lakes in my constituency, I can tell you now that local authorities are struggling, including Kent, with getting provision into schools and supporting our students. So what can we do to ensure that this appalling legacy is sought and redressed? And just lastly, it's around early years access. One of the very proudest achievements under the last Labour government was Sure Start, which gave educational opportunities. We know that if you target students at the very youngest age, outcomes can be positive at the end of their life. That life course is absolutely critical if we're to get aspiration into our young people. So what is the government going to do around this early years provision so that we can get support to parents and give educational opportunities for all our young people? Thank you.
Ms Vince.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. I feel the duty to speak in this debate, and thank you to my honourable friend from Folkestone Hyde for bringing this important discussion to the House. Like many that have spoken today, I'm a former teacher, and I know of the huge impact that a child's home life can have on educational attainment. And I feel it's really important that when we talk about children's educational attainment, we're not only talking about exam results, but about the wider school experience. Sometimes we call it the hidden curriculum. In Harlow, my constituency, there are pockets of high child poverty. 17.3% of children in Harlow live in low-income families, compared to the Essex average of 12.8. And we saw that during the terrible pandemic, where nearly 8,000 families had food parcels delivered to them. This will have a huge impact on children. No child will be able to learn if they're hungry. And I welcome this government's pledge for free breakfast clubs in every primary school. Yeah. But I do want to speak, as my honourable friend next to me has mentioned, about a specific group of young people who are often forgotten, and that's young carers. School absent rates are 38%, well, basically 38% of young carers surveyed reported they regularly miss school because of their caring situation. No young person can learn when they are not at school, and no one can focus with the anxiety of being away from those that they care for. I welcome the statement from the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, who has pledged to make young carers an integral part of the recently announced youth strategy. And I would ask that young carers are a golden thread in any future educational reform. I had the privilege to invite a group of young carers up to Parliament recently. One young girl highlighted that when she rang up a university and said she could no longer attend because of her caring commitment, she wasn't asked any follow-up questions. Yet young carers, and also we know that young carers are not classified as disadvantaged within education. Another young carer raised with me that he felt there was no description which fitted him when he went to university. When he went on the university's website, there was no description of young carer that fitted his young caring abilities. I want to finish, Chair, just with an ask that actually this lack of, we know this lack of awareness across education and university of young carers needs to be recognised and responded to. I would personally like to see young carer leads as a standard and not as an exception.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I congratulate again my honourable friend, member for Folkestone and Hythe, for securing this important debate. Now, barriers to learning and skills development not only affect children and young people in Stoke-on-Trent and Kidsgrove, my constituency, but adults too. Upskilling is key to economic participation and engagement in the labour market. Yet last week, when I met with our local Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce, they highlighted concerns from local employers regarding a lack of basic skills development amongst young people and adults at all points in their careers. So it's important we focus on helping people to achieve those qualifications. Now, our City Council, our local FE and independent providers do work incredibly hard to upskill adults, and this is reflected in our higher participation rates in further education and skills. Tackling barriers to educational opportunity is really important in promoting social mobility in my constituency of Stoke-on-Trent North and Kidsgrove. And this is something that many of our local schools and colleges focus on and recognise. However, as we know, barriers to opportunity are multifaceted. They're linked to deprivation, housing conditions and household income. And improving educational outcomes goes hand in hand with addressing socio-economic inequality. However, perhaps the most significant barriers to educational opportunity in Stoke-on-Trent North and Kidsgrove are the high rates of speech numeracy and language deficiency in our early years outcomes. As we all know, early years development is a significant predictor of our educational outcomes across the whole life course. Sadly, last year in Stoke-on-Trent, only 1 in 2 of our 2-year-olds had a good level of development compared to nearly 80% in England, and the level of development locally has been on a decline for a number of years. So in conclusion, Mr Pritchard, tackling barriers to educational opportunity begins in the very early years. And I'm certain, and I hope the Minister will agree with me, that investment in our early years is critical to tackling barriers to educational opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and thanks to my honourable friend of Folkestone and Hythe for securing this important debate. I want to focus on the importance of the fabric of the buildings in which we deliver our educational opportunities, and in fact on one school in particular in my constituency of Stoke-on-Trent South, Trentham Academy. Now, I have been a teacher for 30 years, and I was astonished at what I saw when I visited the academy just recently. So I met with head teacher Mr Mike Whittington to discuss the state of Trentham Academy and to see for myself the challenges they face. I will just say at the outset that this is an excellent school. It has achieved good in Ofsted with outstanding in some areas, and it is highly oversubscribed. It is already over 790 pupils for a 750 capacity school, and that last year it received 580 applications for new students as the first choice of parents. It delivers excellent education. It delivers a really strong ethos, and the teachers are smiling, and it really is a great little school. So when I visited, I cannot be more shocked at the state I saw. There are rotting floors and mould in some classrooms. There are regular annual rat infestations with fly infestations following. Rat and other vermin have repeatedly fallen into classrooms, into teachers' hair, and worst of all, into their cups of tea, which is, I know, enough of an excuse itself to rebuild the school, in my view. There are only 5 female toilet cubicles, 3 male cubicles, and 11 cubicles in a unisex toilet, which I would not go in. Not because it's unisex, but it is just not fit for purpose. It is technically against building regulations, and the disabled accessible toilets are inadequate. The legislation says there must be 1 toilet per 20 pupils. This Trentham Academy currently has 1 toilet per 40 pupils, and some of those I would not go in. I could continue on. One issue that I have is the poor fire doors and the real fire safety risks. So I asked the Minister, I welcome the school rebuilding fund with 2.4 billion for school maintenance and 1.4 for school rebuilding. I asked merely that would give us the money and to rebuild the school, and I can assure you we will deliver a cracking school with great education, and then we'll fill the need for extra secondary school places that Stoke-on-Trent needs so desperately.
Benches, 10 minutes each. Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Pritchard. Could I start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Folkestone and Hythe for securing such an important and also, as we've heard, such a wide-ranging debate. Tackling barriers to educational opportunity is just so critical to everything, to the lives of our young people, to the strength of our economy, and to the future of our country and our society. Given the breadth of the topic, I hope members will forgive me that I'm not going to be able to cover everything in depth, but I will try and cover as much territory as I can. Children face all sorts of barriers to the education they deserve, whether it's growing up in poverty at home, whether it's getting the support they need for special educational needs or disability or mental ill health, whether it's growing up in foster care, or the more than 140,000 children growing up in kinship care, as the Honourable Member for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes talked about, or indeed young carers, which the Honourable Member for Leeds South Western Morley and the Honourable Member for Harlow talked about, all of whose needs mustn't be forgotten. Everything from hunger to abuse to the damaging impact of social media, these are all the barriers that young people are facing in their education today. And it's not just about children at school. The vital role of education starts obviously in the early years and continues throughout people's lives. And indeed, the Honourable Member for Folkestone and Hythe opened the debate by focusing very much on adult education and skills, which is vitally important at a time when the demands of our economy are changing so rapidly and unpredictably. It's never been more important that adults have the opportunities they need to learn the new skills so they can get well-paid, secure new jobs. And I'm looking forward to seeing the detail of what the new government brings forward on their reform of the apprenticeship levy, their review of the reform of level 3 qualifications as well. And I hope that they will look at boosting apprenticeship pay for young people, which is very much out of step with the national minimum wage. So rather than speak about all of these things in any detail, I'm going to just focus on a few barriers and offer a few solutions that I hope the Minister will consider carefully. One of the biggest barriers to educational opportunities is, of course, poverty. With just over 4 million children in the UK estimated to be living in poverty, that equates to 9 in every classroom. In a country like ours, Mr. Pritchard, that is utterly shameful. Many honourable members who are former teachers here will recognise the phrase that is often said to me when I go into schools, that school staff see themselves as the fourth emergency service in dealing with poverty and the social issues that that brings with it, and whether it's children living in poor housing, with poor health, with challenging relationships at home. We all hear from teachers who are spending time helping disadvantaged pupils with food, with uniform, with other basics that their families are struggling to provide. That simply can't go on. So 3 ways I would suggest to the Minister to tackle poverty and child poverty in particular. First, abolish the 2-child benefit cap. This cruel cap denies over 1.5 million children and their families the support they deserve. Its abolition would lift some 300,000 children out of poverty immediately, giving them the chance to learn, to grow, and to access the life chances that are available to some of their more well-off classmates. Secondly, extend the eligibility for free school meals. Food poverty poses a particular barrier to education. Hungry children struggle to learn, and they often struggle with their behaviour. They face a fundamental barrier that many of their classmates may be lucky enough to avoid. And there's simply no excuse in 2024 for a child being hungry at school. By expanding free school meals to all children in poverty, we could ensure that 900,000 children are no longer at risk of being hungry in the afternoon and having to learn on an empty stomach. So I'd urge the Minister to make that commitment, but if that's too big an ask of the Chancellor, a good first step would be auto-enrolment of all of those who are eligible to free school meals. In Lib Dem-led Durham County Council, the introduction of auto-enrolment this academic year has already led to some 2,500 extra children receiving a hot, healthy meal in the middle of the school day. And all the evidence tells us that these children will have improved educational outcomes and improved health outcomes. Thirdly, tackle the attainment gap through a tutoring guarantee. The attainment gap between disadvantaged and more well-off pupils has now widened every year since 2020, and the evidence is clear that tutoring can be highly effective in improving educational outcomes for disadvantaged young people. Small group tutoring showed its value under the National Tutoring Programme, which was poorly implemented at first, but when school leaders were empowered to deliver it, the evidence has shown that tutoring doesn't just lead to improved attainment, it can help build pupils' confidence and benefit their attendance, which we know is such a big problem in our schools at the moment. But funding for tutoring ran out in July of this year. So will the government commit to a national tutoring guarantee so that every disadvantaged pupil can access the support they need? It will be a small step with a huge impact that would help break down one of the biggest barriers to education in our society today. Now, of course, a number of honourable members have spoken about the huge crisis in our special educational needs and disability system, which affects 1 in 6 pupils. Only 17% of SEND pupils achieve grades 5 or above at GCSE in English and Maths, compared to 51% of other pupils. And they're much more likely to be suspended or permanently excluded. At the beginning of last year, when I visited Feltham Young Offenders Institute, I know that the vast majority of young men in that institute had special educational needs and were out of education for a lot of their childhood. There is simply not enough mainstream support available at school, coupled with a lack of specialist provision, which has left many children languishing at home without proper access to education. Now, this is an enormous challenge that deserves many debates of its own, and we have had many very well-subscribed debates in this place since the general election. Indeed, I secured an urgent question on the National Audit Office report that's been mentioned last month. So could I urge the Minister to look again at Liberal Democrat proposals for a new national body for SEND to support children with the most complex needs, more training and specialists to identify needs early, and speed up the building of state special schools. Now, we know SEND is closely related to poor mental health services, and our mental health services are really struggling to keep up pace with demand. There's huge unmet need. Research conducted by the Liberal Democrats earlier this year revealed that there are over 300,000 children stuck on a mental health waiting list. Many of these children will struggle to learn properly and will almost certainly experience their condition getting worse while they're waiting for support. With the number of children with a diagnosable mental health condition now hitting 1 in 5, putting a dedicated mental health professional at every school, both primary and secondary, is urgent. Now, there was a brief comment by the Honourable Member for Stoke-on-Trent North on the early years sector, which hasn't been talked about much in this debate. And I would just say, after years of Conservative underfunding of our early years sector, the Labour government now is introducing this national insurance rise, which is going to hit many private providers of early years and not-for-profit providers of early years provision. And the early years allowance has said that this could push the sector to the brink of collapse. So I look forward to hearing from the Minister what she has to say about whether she's pressing her colleagues in the Treasury to ensure that sufficient funding is available and that actually it's not parents once again having to foot the bill and more disadvantaged parents and their children being forced out of early years provision, because in the early years is where we can make the biggest impact on educational attainment. Now, Mr Pritchard, I'm going to finish by saying I recognise that all of these solutions cost money, but it's time we stop seeing our children as a cost item in a profit and loss account. It's time we saw our children and young people and their education as one of the best investments we can make, an investment in the potential of every individual, an investment in our society, an investment in our economy. This government cannot be serious about growth if it does not invest in educational opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I should first, of course, congratulate the member for Folkestone and Hythe on securing the debate today and his focus on the specific issue. I also thought it was a very good speech. I want to echo the commendation from him and the member for Livingston on the work of colleges and the important things that they do. Now, I'm going to get the ding-dong out of the way first. So I will gently point out to the member that apprenticeship starts under the Conservatives went up quite considerably from 2010 to 2022-23, from 279,000 to 337,000. I'm sure he'll want to reflect that in his closing remarks. I also wanted to pick up the Honourable Member for Portsmouth North. I mean, we're never going to get anywhere if we're going to talk about a toxic legacy under the Conservatives for education, right? We all want to make progress on this stuff. In 2010, we were behind Germany and France in PISA. Now we are ahead. Obviously, contrast that with what happened in Wales and in Scotland. The member for Glasgow East was absolutely right that the SNP have failed to close the gap with disadvantaged children. It's also important, if we're going to make some progress, which we all want to do, on raising educational standards and helping disadvantaged children, it's important to look at why some things have gone well. And one of those reasons is a knowledge-based curriculum. So I would say to the member for Southampton Itchen, we just need to be very, very careful on what we do in this area, because the worst thing we can do for disadvantaged children is to dilute academic standards.
Now, I'm going to go on to the meat of the debate now, because I think I've covered that bit off. On apprenticeships, we are all interested in the numbers of apprenticeships going up. I'd be very interested to know from the Minister how many she thinks the apprenticeship number starts are going to go up by, and whether the government stands by the pledge to spend up to 50% of the apprenticeship levy on other types of training. Now, that was something that obviously was committed to before the election. I'm not clear as to whether that is still the case now. It would be very helpful for the Minister to give clarification on that specific point. I agree with the member for Sutherland and Stone that once these skills have gone, it is very difficult to get them back, and it would be very interesting to hear from the Minister what is she doing to safeguard specific high value and also very rare skills, particularly in the craft area. I hope the Minister answers correctly the brilliant contribution from the Right Honourable Member for East Hampshire on free school meals, on holiday activities and on breakfast clubs, all crucial areas if we're going to drive forward the progress of disadvantaged children. And I share the question from the member for Hyndburn on when the Wellbeing Bill is going to come forward. The Lib Dem spokesman also mentioned the importance of driving down the number of absences that we have. I think this is something that on a cross-party basis we absolutely want to do. The register, which I believe is going to be in that bill, we will very much support. So I'm very interested in when that is coming forward and how the Minister intends to make that work. I thought that the speeches that were made on young carers by the member for Leeds South West and Harlow were very moving and absolutely right. I'd be very interested in the Minister's comments on those. And the mention from the Lib Dem front bench on state special schools I thought was very important. I was pleased to see that they haven't been paused, but given the conversation and the speech that was given last week by the Secretary of State, can the Minister confirm that she still believes in the principle of having separate special schools, that this is something that is going to be continued, that this is something that parents can have the choice as to whether they send their kids to or not? And I very much echo the comments from the Lib Dem member about the importance of early years. I will quibble with her about the funding that's gone into early years, which obviously is massively increased under the last government. But we have a real problem now in terms of early years funding. The next change will have a significant impact on the sector. It will mean that costs for parents, in contrast to what the Prime Minister said today, will go up. And also, childcare provision has had no guarantees that the government's funding formula will include provision for the increased costs from NICs. Obviously, under the last government, we set it up so that the minimum wage increases will be taken into account. Can the Minister please confirm today that the increased costs from the employers' national insurance contributions will be taken into account by the government in the funding formula? Otherwise, we are going to have a real crisis in terms of provision, and she needs to recognise that and take it away if she can't answer it now. But more broadly, I think this has been a very helpful debate today. I think it's been an interesting debate today. I think education is an area where we need to work together to make progress on disadvantaged children. But I would say to all members opposite, what we will do on this side is to drive that forward by insisting on high academic standards, by rigorous holding to account of schools in terms of their performance, and making sure that the curriculum is knowledge-based, that it drives for children, that we will support the government if they seek to drive up apprenticeship starts, if they seek to improve vocational education, and we will work as hard as we can with them on improving the absence rates that we have at the moment, because we know that is what's hitting disadvantaged children. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Minister, before I call the Minister, if she wants to make time for the move of the motion to have a minute or two at the end, I think we have time if she's so minded. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Pritchard. It's a real honour to be able to respond to this debate, and I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone and Hythe, for securing the debate on this important matter and for the wide title of this debate as well. There's been some really excellent contributions, and I would just like to really thank the honourable friends, right honourable members and honourable members for all of your contributions. I will really try my best to answer as best I can through the very wide remarks and questions that were made of me. But I in particular just want to mention a few. I want to mention the member for Grimsby and Cleethorpes on mentioning kinship and send. Highburn also talking about send. Stoke-on-Trent talking about the needs for building. Stratford for really speaking about adding value. The honourable member for Chichester talking about creative industries and the government's response to that, and as well Stoke-on-Trent early years, the conversations about young carers, breakfast clubs, and so on. Now, this government believes that the opportunity to enjoy a good life with a great job and secure a home should belong to everyone. Every child and young person should have the opportunity to succeed, no matter who they are and where they're from or how much their parents earn. But as a nation, we are yet to fulfil that promise. The background where you are from often counts for more success than effort and enterprise, and too many children are held back by the circumstances they're born into, arising from their background, such as from children from lowest earning families, children from diverse backgrounds, those with special educational needs and disabilities, those with experience of the care system, and even young carers. All face too many barriers to building the best life that they can. Too many children and young people grow up seeing success as something that happens to others, but success also belongs to them. That's why this new government will be a mission-led one with a defining mission to break the unfair link between background and opportunity. The opportunity mission will build opportunity for all by giving every child the best start in life, helping them achieve and thrive, building skills for opportunity and growth, and ensuring security. Building skills for opportunity and growth is key to the opportunity mission. From the age of 16 years onwards, lays the transition into the world of work and future opportunities. We will ensure every young person can follow the pathway that is right for them, whether built through high-quality apprenticeships, colleges or universities, including open universities. The right skills and the right course give people the ability to progress into good jobs and not to shy away from opportunity. My honourable friend has focused most of his points on skills and technical education. I want to assure everyone here today that this government is focused on opportunities for everyone, whatever their background, age, ability and identity. We are ambitious for children and young people and for their aspirations. Our higher education system is globally recognised for its excellence, which is great, and this government recognises that university is right for many and is not only the option for everyone. Apprenticeships and skills is absolutely the right option for others, which is why this government is determined to get it right and to support those young people who wish to take that path. My honourable friend from Folkestone and Hythe is absolutely right when he says under 14 years of Conservative government, apprenticeships have plummeted and the apprenticeship levy was exposed to be inadequate. These skills, I'm afraid I won't go. I've got so much to get through in responding. Their skills policy has too often been made in isolation, leading to a confusing system, confusing for employers and confusing for individuals, and not leading to the right jobs for our population. And I would just also like to say that the volume of skills shortage vacancies in England more than doubled between 2017 and 2022, from 226 500,000 to 531 and 200,000. Too many young people, indeed people of all ages, have been able to gain the benefits of quality post-16 education, and these figures are shocking about the skills shortages. We need to do so much more so that people do not face unemployment, do not face lower wages, and do not experience poor health outcomes. This This lack of a clear plan has led to widespread skill shortages in areas such as construction, manufacturing, hospitality, information and communications, healthcare and social care. And that is why meeting the skill needs of the next decade is central to delivering all the government's 5 missions: economic growth, opportunity for all, a stronger NHS, safer streets, a clean energy. We aim to create a clear, flexible, high-quality skill system that supports people of all ages, breaking down the barriers to opportunity and driving economic growth. We have not stood still on this. The budget last month is investing an additional £300 million in further education to help ensure young people are developing the skills that they need, and £950 million of skills capital funding, including £300 to ensure that college estates are in good condition to meet the learning needs of students. We have also commenced a curriculum and assessment review, which is now in full swing, with roadshows up and down the country. It will deliver a curriculum that is rich in knowledge, strong on skills and led by evidence. We have announced the Youth Guarantee, which will help to ensure young people have the opportunities to acquire the skills that they need. We will reform the apprenticeship levy into a growth and skills levy to deliver greater flexibility for both learners and employers. As a first step, we will introduce foundation apprenticeships to give more young people a foot in the door. These new foundation apprenticeships will support clear progression pathways into further work-based training and sustained employment, and we will support and fill the pipeline of new talent that employers need. We're investing £40 million to support development of delivery of foundation apprenticeships, as well as shorter duration apprenticeships that will provide further flexibility for employers, as so many have called for. We have also listened to feedback about qualifications, with concerns expressed about the rapid pace of reforms from the previous government, the quality of qualifications and how they don't always serve students well. This government is determined to do better, and indeed we will. We have therefore announced a short-term internal review of qualifications reform. This clearly signals our intention to balance the range of concerns and provide clarity in the qualifications landscape. We believe this is the best way to support students, to unlock opportunity and to harness talent and to drive growth. We have introduced Skills England in shadow form. Skills England will ensure we have the highest trained workforce needed to deliver the national, regional and local skills of the next decade, aligned with the upcoming industrial strategy. Skills England will ensure there is a comprehensive choice of apprenticeships, training and technical qualifications for individuals and employers to access. Skills England will ensure skills system is clear and people will be able to navigate their way through this for both young people and older adults, strengthening career pathways into jobs across the economy. It will increase the quality and quantity of skills development in the workplace. It will do this by providing an authoritative assessment of national and regional skills needs in the economy now and in the future. Now, moving to schools rebuilding programme, this government has increased next year's capital allocation to improve school buildings to £2.1 billion, which is £300 million more than this year. We have also committed to £1.4 billion to support the current school rebuilding programme to deliver 518 projects across England. Now, on SEND, obviously there was lots of issues raised around SEND because of the huge concerns for children with disabilities, SEND, obviously, and also to do with parents' anxieties around this. Now, on reform, this government's ambition is that all children and young people in SEND will receive the right support to succeed in their education and as they move into adult life. We are committed to improving inclusiveness and expertise in mainstream schools and ensuring special school provisions continue to meet the needs of the most complex children, restoring parents' trust that they will know that their child will get the support that they so desperately need. We will work with the sector as it is essential that we work with our valued partners to make sure that we join with them in this shared vision. There were questions about free school meals and it's very difficult to say some words sometimes, especially when your mouth is quite dry. To make sure that parents are eligible, children are eligible. So this government, we have a mission to break down these barriers of opportunity and to really confront child poverty. The continued provision of free school meals to disadvantaged children plays an important role in this. This government spends around 1.5 billion annually on 3 lunches for over 3 million pupils. As with all government programmes, we will keep our approach open. We will continue to review this to make sure that we don't want any child to go hungry, and that remains our ambition. We are also doing a child poverty review. The new Child Poverty Ministerial Task Force will drive cross-government action on child poverty, starting with overseeing the development of an ambitious child poverty strategy, which will be published in spring next year. The task force publication on the 23rd of October, Tackling Child Poverty, Developing Our Strategy, sets out our framework for how the strategy will be developed, harnessing all available levers to deliver a reduction in child poverty. This Parliament as part of our ambitious 10-year strategy which addresses root causes of this. With regards to breakfast clubs, we'll remove the barriers to opportunities by ensuring that every primary school, no matter their circumstance, is well prepared for school. From April 2025, free breakfast clubs will be available for up to 750 early adopters, ahead of the national rollout. Early adopters will allow us to identify and tackle barriers to implementing this breakfast club rollout. This is the first step in our commitment to enabling breakfast clubs to be in all primary schools. And with regards to the Holiday and Activities Fund...
Will she forgive me before she moves on? My main question on breakfast clubs was what happens to the National School Breakfast Programme for secondary schools and special schools. We've heard a lot about primary schools, but we have not heard much about secondary and special schools in disadvantaged areas, and I wonder if she's in a position to tell us a little more about that.
Thank you. This government is committed to tackling child poverty. And as I have already outlaid the Poverty Task Force, many of these issues and these areas are continuing to be reviewed, are continuing to be worked out, but we are determined to bring down child poverty. And in the specific areas that he has mentioned, more information will be coming out about this, and I'm afraid he will just have to be patient, as we have had to be patient for the last 14 years. And what I will also say is that the Children and Wellbeing Bill that has also been mentioned, this government is looking to induce further strategies for improving the outcomes for children and young people and making the reform and the changes that we need. And this Children and Wellbeing Bill will be coming out, but it is as parliamentary time allows. So we appreciate your patience there. Now, time is quickly moving on. There is so much more that I could say, really, about so many other areas that you have mentioned, and I'm afraid as time is running out, I am going to be moving this to a close. But what I would say is that we will try and get responses to you where we can, but please do write in and continue to ask questions. Again, I just want to thank my honourable friend, the member for Folkestone and Hythe, for tabling this debate on which is such an important matter today, and I hope you appreciate I made every attempt to try and respond. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Tony Ball to wind up.
I thank the Minister for her response and for the contributions of everyone here today to this important debate. The contributions from members today have highlighted an inheritance of widening inequality, increasing child poverty, narrowing opportunities, and an education system crying out for change. They have also highlighted that the government's proposals for reform give us cause for optimism. The curriculum review, Skills England, the reform of the apprenticeships levy, improved teacher training on SEND, free breakfast clubs in primary schools, a properly funded education system. There are, of course, particular barriers to opportunity, and we've heard from, for example, the member for Hindburn talking about SEND, the member for Harlow talking about young carers, the member for Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes on kinship carers, and poor school buildings described by the member for Stoke-on-Trent. There is a long way to go. I will respond to the points made by those opposite. The point is that apprenticeships, after the apprenticeship levy was introduced in 2017, there was a 31% fall in apprenticeship starts, and that is a fact which cannot be denied. It's a fact which is being responded to by this government, and it's part of the inheritance that we're actively addressing. I'm proud to be a Labour MP supporting a Labour government, the party that introduced Sure Start, the single most effective measure for reducing child poverty. The measures we're taking will help ensure that every child, regardless of background, will have access to the opportunities that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard.
This House has considered the matter of tackling barriers to educational opportunities. Many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Our country, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. Have a good evening. We will now move on to the next debate. Can members go quietly, please? We're moving on to the next debate. Thank you.